This is your at the Above and Beyond hosting info session. During the session, we're going to kind of go through very high level, everything you need to know about starting your short-term rental, or STRs, which will become to known as different names. You know, we call it Airbnb, but technically if you're looking, Googling your permitting or anything like that, you're going to be looking for short-term rental, nightly rental, vacation rental. Those are kind of the more original terms that it come to know. But now, just like Google's becomes researching, it's becoming your Airbnb, right? Even if you're on multiple platforms, which we are actually on at least 2 platforms. And since we began property managing, we have also looked at, we're going to get probably on our booking platform as well to support our clients as we grow. So that's a bit about what this is going to be about, as well as what you can expect. It'll be very, very high level. The way this is kind of set up is to really be a kind of a crash course intro into kind of all the things within probably about an hour or so, or less or more, depending on questions, and to allow you to figure out kind of what direction you want to go. So you can kind of consider this as your start here. And then from this, you can figure out, what journey, what adventure you kind of want to choose. And we'll go over that as well. And we have all sorts of resources. We're building a community to be able to support you and your journey, whatever that is. I am a super host, and last I checked, premier partner with Airbnb and VRBO. I became a super host right off the bat as soon as it was possible to become one when I first got started. I have helped others become super hosts as well pretty quickly by co-hosting. And I have been invited by Airbnb to be a Superhost ambassador through their Ask a Superhost program. And so what that means is daily I get requests from new interested hosts, and I help them in that beginning part to get set up and then host their first guest. And then they just kind of either go on, or they might join my community or ask me to help them take care of different questions they may have as they continue to host. I have people text me like, what do I do when this happens? And so we offer that as well. So I just want to make sure you're fully supported. I totally believe in this whole thing because it allows anybody to get into real estate essentially and be able to make good money and be able to grow and do their dreams, which I think I support for everybody to do. So that's a bit of that to get started. So I would love to know a bit about you guys. And so I know we're a big group. So if you would, this will help me for later, put it in the chat if you are so inclined. But I'd like to know, what is your, the say, I know you're interested in everything, but the thing that interests you the most, or the question you have kind of at the top of your list about your hosting journey. What are you wanting to know? So that way I can go through that and make sure that we're answering those questions. If you have any concerns or anything like that, so that I can make sure that we're on the right path. I know a couple of our info sessions, we've had people who already host and they just kind of wanted to know, a bit of information about what I had going on. And it was actually a great experience because I really didn't have a whole lot there for people who are already in the midst of hosting. I am on the board at one of the properties that I manage and own. I actually started or restarted their rental committee there. And what's been amazing about that is you get to hear a lot of like pitfalls. These are people who are also, most of them are hosting as well. And so I even learned some things I added to kind of help with my journey, and shared some of the things that worked for me as well. Because one of the things that you'll want to make sure is to have all your stuff in place, because most people have asked me, what are the things to watch out for, or what do you do with this? And often if you have your listing set up correctly with their rules in place right in front of your person at the right place, you're going to really avoid a lot more pitfalls, and you're going to have a lot more fun with it, and a lot less things go on, negatively. And so yes, keep your questions coming in here so I can make sure we address them as we go. Great questions, everyone. So I will be getting to them as we go through. How do you get started? So there's so many different ways to get started. And the way I got started was we bought a condo, and it was already being used as an Airbnb. And so I got an opportunity to essentially, with their permission, use their photos, work for a professional, I got to use kind of the listing that they made because they were already super hosts, and they were a property management company, which meant they already kind of knew all the ins and outs, the rules and legalities to try to make sure that they covered their bases, as well as kind of ensure that they're going to bring in guests who are going to honor their place and have a good time without a whole lot of issues. And so that really helped me to really learn very quickly. I asked a lot of questions when I got started. And as a guest, actually, because when we bought our place, we actually traveled full time. So we rented out our primary residence so that we could afford the condo. And then we essentially went on the road for a year, managed it remotely, made sure we had the right people in place, would come back when we needed to. And then we were actually quite successful with doing that. And was able to manage it remote, which is actually another question I tend to get. So that's one way to get started. Another way to get started is to host your own place. And so if you own your home or you're renting a house or somewhere where you're living, and if you don't own it, then you'll probably need to get permission. If you do own it, the HOA can sometimes be an issue. But let's just say, you have permission to host the place where you're living. Well, a lot of people will, depending on cost, I've actually heard of people put their place on Airbnb, have it set up to host and have it easy for them to be able to pop out if they need to. And then they will go to a hotel that's quite a bit less, right, than maybe what they would do. So for example, let's say like I'm in Austin, and big weekends here are like pretty much all of March is huge. And so let's say I have a place, near the center of Austin. Well, some people will rent their place out for $400 or $500 to about $1,000 a night and say, well, yes, I can go to a hotel or even another Airbnb for $100 or $200 a night and make that difference. So that is an example of a way you can get started, kind of dip a toe in. What's interesting, I've had a lot of people ask me about their timeshares, using their weeks or the fractionals, putting those weeks on Airbnb to try to recoup some costs as well. So the way the short-term renting works, especially on Airbnb, they make it very easy. You can choose to have a complete open calendar, or you can have the specific dates that you plan on being gone. If you go on vacation, I know people who will just rent out their place when they go on vacation so that they can, have their vacation covered when they travel, or if they're going to go somewhere for the summer or whenever they travel in general, they may choose to elect to rent their place. So that's another way to get started. Another way to get started is to lease a place that you don't live in and get permission from the landlord, the owner, to rent the place out. I actually have a client that I help manage some of his Airbnbs, and that's pretty much what he does. He lives in California, and he owns maybe 2 here, but he rents out, he'll rent or lease houses in a certain area, and he will, work with the owner. He'll give him a presentation, tell him kind of what he does, the benefits, and I can help you do that, create a presentation if that's something you're interested in, so that the owner will feel comfortable with you using it as an Airbnb. It's quite possible you may pay a little bit more for your rent. Sometimes they'll do that. I've seen that. Or other times they're just happy to have it rented for the amount they ask, and they're fine with it as long as you have your ducks in a row. But always make sure you check the permitting in your area, because I actually have heard. And for example, Branson is an area we manage property in, and that place is split kind of down the middle, where because it's such a touristy area, a lot of people will rent out, like they have Airbnb, vacation rentals, a whole lot of property management companies out there on one side. But on the other side, the city decided to make it where you can't have anything. I think it's less than 30 days. And I think they wanted to promote long-term leases so that the people who live there could actually afford to live there. So you're finding some cities starting to do that. So before you commit, buy, or do anything, you're going to want to make sure that the HOA, that the city zoning, county, all that stuff is going to support it. Because I've heard of people leasing a place from from an owner who says it's okay, but then, oh, whoops, it's actually not allowed. So, so you're going to want to make sure to do that. All right. And so I kind of touched on this a bit. So you definitely can, one of the best ways is, like I said, leasing a place to do that. I've also heard of, if you have a great presentation and you go to the right apartment complex, oftentimes they'll let you lease their vacant apartments, because their goal is to have as high a capacity or occupancy as possible. And so if you're running into a place that's, they've got vacant units that that they haven't been able to rent out, and you come and you set up some sort of an arrangement with them that, while it's sitting there vacant, they'll let you furnish it and rent it as an Airbnb in exchange for whatever deal you make. That's also an option as well. And keep in mind too, and this is something that if I were helping you set up this presentation to make it appealing to them, because you always want to create the win-win if you want a yes in any situation. And so, they have people coming and looking at their place. A lot of times people want to see a model of it. So you pretty much are setting up their apartment like a model home or a model apartment. You rent it out on Airbnb, probably most of the weekends. And so you can say, you're welcome to show it when it's available, to appetize your potential tenants to rent here at your place. So definitely ways to present that. Another way of starting an Airbnb without owning a property is to make arrangements with owners who they own the property, but they really just don't want to manage it, or maybe hadn't even thought about it, or maybe they have long-term tenants, and maybe you approach them and you say, hey, I'd be happy to turn this into an Airbnb for you. I will co-host it or host it for you. It's almost like property management, but through the Airbnb platform, you can be set up as a co-host, which means, it would be their listing, and you would essentially manage it for them. And then they would, pay you according to whatever you guys agree to. That's the way you can really get started. If you're not really ready to do the property thing, but you want to get started, that's why I tell a lot of people, you can set yourself up to be people's co-hosts. As long as you're good at guest relations, guest management, and all that can be learned as well, which is something we can also help with. So you guys are the one-stop shop. That's something that's makes it really easy to get in if it's something that you're interested in. And how much does it cost to get started? So great question that I get asked a lot as well. So Airbnb themselves actually don't charge you to get started. A lot of VRBO has a similar model, but they have an option where you can pay a certain amount up front. Last I checked, it was $400 or $500. And then you pay 3% on every booking that you get. So the majority of the fees actually go to the guest. Airbnb has it where it doesn't cost you anything up front, and they just charge a 3% on the end. VRBO, and last I heard, I might have to check this out because they may have changed it, but if you elect not to pay up front, they're going to take about 5%, I believe it is, of every one of your rentals. And it can seem like I don't want to pay the $400 or $500 up front, or however much it is now, but do the math, because I will tell you, and we can talk about this later, the logistics and the data that I have. Every person that I've helped through the Superhost program, where I help them get started, and they've been all over from the place where they think that it's in the rural areas and no one's going to come. I haven't seen it take more than 2 days max for someone to get their first booking if they complete their listing. So, and that's not always with professional photos either. So just keep in mind, like, people are traveling. It's actually quite amazing to see how much more so they are. There's been a lot of issues or concerns with the inflation and things slowing down. But it didn't even slow down during COVID. Actually, it slowed down for like March, because we had just bought our place the previous year, and we were kind of concerned. We were hoping for things to ramp up because we bought after the high season. And so things got really slow for us. And we were depending on the Airbnb or the income to pay for the mortgage, which you can do, by the way. That's what a lot of people will do. And so at the end of May, it just ramped up. We were at our max capacity, making 5, 6K, 7K a month all the way through December. So it's pretty much been mainly like that. It has slowed down a bit, going into October, November, but not like it was. It's amazing to see how many more people are traveling, at least right now. So it's a great time to jump in there. And from what I've seen, there's a lot more people traveling than there is inventory, meaning people are looking to stay anywhere. I have a place I'm in the Austin area, so I have a place that's closer to the Austin area and a place that's quite a bit further away. And people will still go to that place further away just for Formula One, which is all the way south. And the place I'm at is like all the way west. So maybe like an hour and a half from there. So people will travel. There's not a whole lot of places for as many people who are looking to stay. And so your place will get booked. And how much do you make? So that's something that I touched on a little bit. It's quite amazing how much you can make when you just start seeing coming it in, and you're like, whoa, I didn't really do anything, and it's just stacking up. In my experience, I've said, like, whatever you would probably make renting your place out to a long-term renter, I'd say multiply it by 2, And then, high season, maybe even more than that. But generally, depending on your mortgage situation, if that's what you're looking for, I've seen a lot of people at least be able to make their mortgage, if not double. For one of our places, January, February tends to be slower, so we don't always make, but ours is quite a bit, and our dues are super high. So we don't always make our mortgage on January and February, but we'll make, double or double and a half, March, end of May, all the way through August, sometimes even September. And then, December holiday and November holidays really increase that amount as well. So a lot you can make there. And keep in mind, yes, I'm paying vendors, I'm paying, which is housekeeping, the occasional maintenance. You would be surprised, you actually don't spend a whole lot on your consumables if you buy smart. I think the only thing I may buy more often, actually it's not too bad, so like your towels and your sheets, if you have good housekeeping who really, helps to take care of your stuff, helps you do your shopping, and will let you know when you need to replace things. We get a lot of our stuff from Costco, occasionally Amazon, but nowadays Amazon's not always less expensive. So, it's really good to be in a group where you can ask each other what are good tips, as well as getting into groups to get good housekeeping advice. So we touched on this a bit. So let's say, you've decided for sure you want to do some sort of Airbnb. The options you have are DIY. That's what I did. But I did have somebody that I could call. I'm telling you, like, we have been so blessed. We have not had hardly any issues at all. I have tips and ways that has probably contributed to that, but also that went with starting out with those options, rules, having my listing in place to make sure everything was very clear up front so the guest knew what to expect. An example of that is having an age minimum. I highly recommend an age minimum, especially when you get started, especially if you're concerned about damage. That's going to be that and some other things, and your pricing being correct for your space in your area are going to be huge. Having 2-day minimums is going to be huge. I've heard most people say no age minimum and a 1-day stay is going to increase your likelihood of parties. And don't get me wrong, I love parties, but when you're in a community, you don't want anybody messing with your Airbnb money. So it's good to have those things in place. Also, there's pet things that I totally would recommend. So these are things that I would walk you through if I were walking alongside you. So with the DIY, I always recommend having somebody, whether that's me or whoever, who's been doing it, who's done it before, to kind of give you tips on making sure your listing is set up right, your cancellation policy is set up right. There's a whole bunch of things. Now, if this is exciting to you, and how you, for example, your keyless entry, your thermostats, where do you make your home smart, when do you go too far with making it smart? And everybody's going to have different viewpoints on how to do this. I can speak for what's worked for me, and it has worked very well, very consistently. Like I said, I've had very, very little to no issues. Prayerfully, that stays that way. And I think that is because of some of the things that I have in place to mitigate that. The other option to running your listing is hiring a property manager or having a co-host. So that would be kind of DIY with adding someone, whether that's an actual person like me or someone or your partner or a partner in the business with you to field questions, to field guest issues throughout the day and night, to kind of take turns who's going to be manning the app when you have questions. I don't often get, well, I do here and there, but it's not excessive, but I do get requests and questions that'll come in late at night, mostly from people wanting to book the place, less so from guests. Guests are the guests that I am inviting in, or the guests that I attract are very considerate, but I'm also very available as well. So it's good to think about, like, if you're going to DIY, are you okay with sometimes fielding things day and night, being available day and night? The way to field that, if you are someone who travels or someone who's out of state or out of town from where your property is, then just having the right people in place, having a great housekeeping person you partner with, as well as having a maintenance person ready when you need that. These are the kind of main things, as well as someone who's going to do your running for you. So if a guest needs something, or if you need to replenish something, or if you need to have an Amazon delivery sent somewhere, and sometimes your cleaning person will help you with that. So when you're talking to, and I probably need to add this as a slide, when you are or actually no, it's its own question or its own course in of itself or its own topic. But hiring your vendors, there's definitely questions you're going to want to have there. I've run into some pitfalls not asking certain questions that you don't want to deal with right whenever your guest is there or needing something. And usually hiring the right cleaners. I mean, anybody who hosts or does short-term rental, that's like the biggest issue. Even people who've been doing it for 20 years. Consistency with your cleaning person. So there are ways to work with that, but that is something you definitely want to try to have kind of up front and do it right. Hiring a property manager, this is the more traditional route before things like Airbnb and VRBO showed up. If somebody had an extra, real estate property or a vacation house or something like that, where they really weren't there often, they would hire companies to manage it, to be able to rent it. And there weren't these platforms like they have there now. And even before the internet was a thing, you pretty much relied on travel agents or reputation phone books, things like that, where, you would call a certain company in a certain area that was like Myrtle Beach or places in Washington, that were, or Florida, they were really high vacation areas to find vacation homes. And so that's kind of what's traditional, but now that's kind of morphed where you're finding a lot of these same property management companies will have their own kind of booking website, but they also are all on Airbnb and VRBO because that's just a brilliant place to be. Most people who's going to an area they haven't been to before isn't going to look for their company because they don't know it exists. But people are going to Airbnb, VRBO, booking, wherever they go to find a house. They're going to make sure that that listing is there. So if you have hired a property manager, you're going to be on a lot of different platforms. They're going to have very robust software to be able to manage multiple platforms and have your property everywhere. The downside to that is they're getting very expensive. I only charge 20%, but a lot of them charge 30%, and you're going to have to enter in probably a year contract. So if you ever decided you want to manage it on your own, you're going to kind of consider that. That's one of the reasons why I like to kind of offer options and I don't do contracting, because there are a lot of people who just like, they have that B&B dream, right? They want to run one, they just don't know how to get started. So for those people, I have clients right now where I help them set up their listing, and then I come along as a co-host, help their listing get pretty. I send my photographer and videographer out there. We get their photos up. I run their guests. They kind of watch. They can look at the chat, and they start getting more and more comfortable with with how to do it. And eventually they'll say, well, I want to start responding to the guests. I get them the super host, and then they can usually decide they want to take it from there, or they want me to continue. And I don't just do guest management. I help with fielding issues. I had one client, they were having a lot of AC issues, and we're in Texas. So some of their first guests had the AC go out on them. And so I'm on the phone till late, getting people out there to fix it on a Saturday at like 9 o'clock at night. And it took some work and some strings that I had to pull. So that's something you might not necessarily have just getting started out. And so having someone who has some of those connections in the area where your place is, or is able to build those is very wise to ensure more successful renting of your property. And a lot of people, will decide against this because they're like, well, I don't want to pay, a property manager. I'd rather, which I get that. I thought that same thing. The question you want to ask yourself is, do you think that you'd be able to rent your place successfully without a property manager? And Airbnb increases that likelihood. They'll bring them to you, they'll help them get booked, but any issues that arise there, you'll have to, refund money or unhappy guests or bad reviews. And so if you think that you can manage that, then definitely I think DIY with a bit of support would be good. If you think you may not be super available, or you think you may have some issues with fielding and dealing with conflict and things like that, or you don't want to deal with it, you're like, just send me the money, then property manager could work. Hybrid's pretty much a combination of the two, and I kind of touched on that, whether a co-host situation or you do it yourself and you kind of message someone who's there to kind of answer and field questions for you. But I'm going to say ask questions. One of the best questions, and sometimes people don't remember, like me, even as a coach or a trainer, I might not always remember certain things because different things come up different people. But one big one is you're going to want to make sure to decide if you're ever going to do long-term stays at your place, because that comes with a whole lot of issues. And there are positives as well, like using your slow months to rent to people who for a month or 2 month stays. can be helpful, but you have to do the math, right? If you're going to rent your place out for a certain amount for 10 days out of that month, you want to make sure that whatever you accept for that month is going to be greater or equal to that. But also remember, this person's in your place for a month. You're not really sure how they're taking care of it. You're not sure if it's getting clean. When it's turning over quickly, and it's something that's a good selling point when you're trying to, if you're trying to convince someone or sell the idea to someone, is the more you're cleaning it, the nicer it stays. I've had someone stay at one of our properties for a year lease, and that came with a whole lot more damage and issues and money we needed to spend that we don't typically, because our place is getting turned over and there's the review process that kind of keeps everybody kind of thinking, I don't want to get a bad review. So that's a bit of that. And managing remotely. So we did definitely touch on this part. Having the right people in place is key, especially your housekeeping. And arranging, are they doing your laundry? Are they picking up and replacing your items? Are they checking your place in between guests to make sure there's no damage? Are they inventorying your supplies? All of that stuff, you'll want to find out if that person can do that for you. And sometimes you can turn that into two people. One of my properties that is 2 people, where I have someone who does the laundry, who stages, who makes sure there's no damage, who's inventorying, who does shopping. And then I have someone who just cleans it and gets it turned over. So there's different ways you can kind of divide that labor and that responsibility. And like I said, we can do a whole other talk on that. But one big key to remember, and if you guys already host, if you're already doing this, one of the things people really struggle with is their cleaning. And what's worked well for me is pay them well. Do not cheapen out on your cleaners, because you cannot do it without them. All you need is them to cut corners somewhere, you're not there, or you don't see it before your guest gets there, your guest sees it, and that just sets the whole stay off long. And you don't want that. So pay them well and treat them like a partner. Like, that's a partnership, because if they feel like they have ownership in what you're doing, then they're going to treat you right. They're going to stay with you if they're really good. I have someone who's been with me for 3 years, and she's super good. And now that everybody's discovered her, they all want her to go, but she really is still staying with me because I profit share with her. I take her out to lunch for her birthday. I've become in relationship with her. And I think that that's a key when you run any business, is make it about the relationship, and the business, the money, all that stuff really, really flows behind it. And so that's huge if you want to manage remotely, is having that team in place who loves you, loves what you do, and it feels like they're super a part of it and partnered with you, and they get to take some ownership of it. So that's really, really big. So this is the big one. What helped me was I essentially used the rules and regulations from the people that we bought the condo from, and they were already a property management company. So they had all that stuff and legalities in place. There are templates you can use. The thing is to remember is you can put that all up there, and that's supposed to kind of protect you, because in order to even book it, it says you have to, you accept their agreement. But for example, one place there's a gate system there, and if you tailgate and your car gets hit, they charge you some money. And so that's in a lot of rules, but people will still do it. So one of the things that a lot of us do, what I do is anything that's super important, I put it in the check-in details, because they're really going to read that. Even at the beginning, I say, make sure you read all the check-in details. It's a long text that I send, but I'm like, read it all, because it's going to make sure everything is smooth for your check-in. Because we have, there's gate codes, there's parking spaces that are delegated, things like that. So whatever your situation is or will be, it's definitely good to not only have it there, but really key details that they can't afford to mess up should be in your check-in details that you send before they come. Things to watch out for. So one big thing is to, like I was saying, like your number of nights, the minimum night stay that you have, as well as if you're going to do minimum age requirements, as well as your rules and regulations. Also understanding if there's quiet hours, if you have neighbors that are going to have issues, do you allow pets, and how do you field that? You're going to want to make sure you have all that very clear and in place, so that you can make sure everybody kind of enjoys their stay, enjoys everything, isn't surprised by anything, you're not surprised by anything. And we'll talk about it in a later slide, but the permitting, I know somebody asked about that. And we'll get your questions in a bit. is making sure you understand whatever permitting, whatever rules with the zoning, all that stuff. Oh, and for Airbnb, and I think someone asked this as well, they do take care of your taxes. VRBO, only half of them. We've kind of talked about pros and cons. And what I kind of tell people is there are very few cons if you have your plans in place. One of the big things I tell my clients when I'm kind of coaching, training, working for them, because we have to kind of agree. So before I agree to things with guests, I always kind of go, so let me talk to the owners first, but I will kind of, consult the owners and say, this is what I would do. What do you want to do? And one of the big things is I have a very big open-handed approach. I have a very strict cancellation policy, but case by case, I'm very easygoing, and it has worked really well. I know this sounds silly or woo-woo, but what you put out there is what kind of guests you will attract. And I've noticed, when I have easygoing cleaning people and maintenance and staff and all of that, everything works out. There was one time I actually hired a new cleaning person, and they were great, but just a different energy, different style, and it was very different. Although, like I said, she cleaned great, everything was great, but those two guests, like 2 weekends that she did it, I had the first damage I ever had ever. It was small and minor, and I had a maintenance person who could fix it, which was great, but and it was also a little bit of conflict that was kind of, or division, I feel like that might have showed up. So it's really good to make sure you're careful to work with people that really kind of vibe, that have that same kind of energy, direction, or you talk about it and kind of come to the same kind of agreement. But it has worked well. And I was actually one situation where one of my clients had someone cancel, and she was like, I don't want to give them their money back. And I was like, I understand, because that did block your calendar. But in my experience, and this is literally what I've done and has worked for me, so I can only speak from that, is I just let it go, and open your calendar up. Maybe that's not your guest. That's not the guest for you at that time. And sure enough, like I think within a day or two, someone else booked even more time at a higher cost. So she was quite happy that her week was opened up to be able to bring in a guest that doesn't mind paying more and is going to take good care of her place. So, and I've seen that countless times, trust me. And so when you do that, a lot less cons. And having good maintenance people, someone that can come to your place and fix things, is really, really helpful. If you live in a hot, or let's say extremely cold area, you're going to want to make sure, especially if you're leasing the place or you're co-hosting the place, meaning you're not directly responsible, you're going to want to make sure that the key amenities are in place, right? Like your AC or your HVAC in general, Wi-Fi, your water. I've actually stayed at a place where they turned off the hot water, and this was like in the Austin area. So, you're going to want to make sure that you guys are kind of in alignment on that. And keep in mind, those of you who joined us after we kind of got started, feel free to put your questions in there. I'll go through and kind of handle those. And then if anything is left out, we'll open up the floor. So someone asked about this. So Airbnb at this moment takes care of all the taxes. The VRBO does not. If you're going to go on other platforms, always check it. Then you're also going to want on your city page, because like, for example, the city of Austin does require a permit, but other surrounding cities don't yet. That may change. I think the more busier places have kind of caught up. The slower ones will probably catch up because that's money that they can collect. Make sure you understand now, double check what your taxes are to make sure that Airbnb is collecting them. I feel like VRBO used to, and then they kind of just stop. So, and then the way you collect, if you do need to collect taxes, you'll need to get a sales tax identification number. And then, a lot of times you can go online and do that, depending on what city what state you're in. And you can also Google this as well, and it'll point you in the right directions. With regulations, honestly, I haven't seen too much crackdown. There's a little bit going on, and it's just more of making sure that either the city is able to make money on all the complete explosion of SPRs or short-term rentals, and or making sure that residents who live there are able to find affordable housing. So you're kind of finding that balance starting to show up in some of the larger attended areas. So what's next? So it's up to you. And like I said, we'll get to your questions in just a bit. Well, actually, first we'll go to questions and I'll get to this part here. But essentially, you get to choose your journey. What I love about this is it's not closed-ended, it's open-ended. And I've kind of gone through a few of the combinations, but really the combinations are endless on how you want to do it. You can jump right in, or you can open up a day at a time or a weekend at a time. I had a client who just wanted to do weekends to see how she liked it. And then she opened it up entirely as she got kind of used to it. One of the things that we come in and help with is to either help you get your listing started, or we help you get your listing started. We help you furnish it. We can help you help furnish it for you. We can, pretty much anything you need to get started, we have kind of those resources to do that. And so I'm going to start fielding questions. So for taxes, yeah. So for your income tax, and this, I get this question quite a bit. It's actually still up to you. So one of the things Airbnb is going to ask you for in order to even, get your listing live is to put your banking information in, meaning they want to be able to pay you, and they're going to ask you for your tax information. And you have a choice. You can either put in your social or your business EIN, and you do not have to have a business in order to do this. And you don't have to list it as a business to do this. One of the things that I've found is property management companies who have been doing this a very long time set up their accounts as their names. So they, and before Airbnb used to kind of crack up because they cracked down because they didn't want people leaving the site to go and book directly with the property management company. But now, and I haven't personally done this, so I'd have to look into the ins and outs because it's kind of new, but you can actually set up your listing as a business now. Like you're seeing some of the newer places like Evolve and Vacasa and all of them, you're seeing more of them kind of show up, and so you can do it. I think it's still more personal when you do it kind of as yourself, but I did mine personal, but I listed my business EIN, but I already had a business when I started this Airbnb and as an LLC. And I honestly think in the future for income requirements and things like that, like banking, they're going to start accepting, because Airbnb will actually, and VRBO2 will give you your income statements for what you've made. So for your taxes, when either way, you have to report the income. And so for your taxes at the end of the year, for your excess and extra income, you can go to your Airbnb account for the year. And you can even say, please send me an income report, and you tell them what range, and then they'll email it to you pretty quickly, actually, what you made. And their dashboard's getting pretty nice, where it'll even show you like percentages of, how much you made more or less than, and what future income you have coming and all of that. And so they make it a lot easier to be able to do that. And that was a Steph, I'm not going to say your name right. Question, which is a really great question, and that's awesome. You live in your house. Well, she's one of the persons that I was talking about who will host and will live in their home and kind of host simultaneously, which you can totally do. Actually, in the very, very beginning, actually the owners, the way they even started it, actually was on a call with them when I started becoming the Superhost ambassador, is that they couldn't pay rent, and so they decided to rent out their place. And people would just rent out rooms. They wouldn't rent out their whole places. And so people still can, but they kind of are encouraging people doing their whole place. So you can rent a room out. I've actually had very few people do that. Most people are, going to a hotel and giving them their whole place because there's more income you can make. But nowadays, because gosh, you can't find anything less than $120, $150 these days. And majority, you're looking, even 2 bedrooms in like places in the middle of nowhere are still over $200. In a duplex with a 2 bedroom. So there's definitely money to be made. Jean asked cost to decorate a new Airbnb. That is a really good question, depending on how you do it. So if you go all out, that could just go up from there. Minimally, and I actually am doing this with a client right now, the one I was telling you about, who leases and turns them over, and he actually leased it. Gosh, before he even took possession, he already rented it out for a month. So he's definitely entrepreneurial. And so we're going to have it. takes possession one day and the guy or the person is coming 2 days later. So we're going to like be quick, quickly furnishing it. Now, my style is different than his style. So if, minimum, my suggestion would be if you're going to go minimalistic, just make sure it's quality, and it doesn't have to be expensive quality. So just something that's not going to bend and break easily. Because, people can usually tell that, and it can be kind of frustrating. So I'd say if you can get nicer things, whether that's, through consignment or Facebook Marketplace or whatever, really try to do that. But like he's getting, these Amazon frames that have really good reviews, like 100,000 people are using it. It's great reviews. He's going to put a queen mattress on it and a headboard on the back, and then grab a bunch of stuff from IKEA to furnish the kitchen and the bathrooms and the light things, and then get a few like little tables and nightstands and things like that. And so depending on how you do it, you probably could do each room for less than between 500 to 1,000, depending on how creative you get for your bedrooms. A lot of people, I have to find it again, the name of it, but there is a company that has mattresses that are new but slightly defective. I actually talked to someone who has like a 9-bedroom in a place, and that's what she used, and found really good success with that. So so you probably could do about $500 a room and up, depending on kind of the way you want to do it. And honestly, minimalistic is okay. You have people who are taking staging classes and things like that to help people stage their Airbnb, and that's a great service, especially if you really want to set that up. But to get started, it really doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be super high end and fancy to get started. You can work your way up to that if that's your goal. At one of the places, we just used the furniture that we bought already that was there, and just went from there, and we have had really great success. We get a really great compliments on it. There's just different ways that you can do it in order to make it work for you, and then work up right to it. But I don't think anything should stop you from getting started. I would say most important thing, if you're ready to do it, is to do what you can to get going, so that you don't psych yourself out, and then get started. And then we have when you Airbnb and your place as a room, if you just want to Airbnb a room in your place, this is a question from Amanda, and this is a great question. What I've seen people do is they will, if there's private areas you don't want people to access, you can lock those off. And then also be very clear in your instruction what's accessible and what isn't. They'll put either a coded lock or a key lock on the door. And if it's in suite, then that's pretty easy. If it's not in suite, they might label things or put, what bathroom, and give the bathroom a name if there's a specific bathroom that they're supposed to use. And back in the day, and this way you have to be careful, one person, I read this as kind of a don't do this story, is cameras. They started cracking down on how cameras are being used. People who were having multiple people stay in different rooms, and let's say they weren't there, they were putting cameras in the common areas to make sure that people weren't using their place wrong, but then she got banned. So they started cracking down on cameras. So you have to be really careful with using cameras. You can use them outside the home, pointing outside there, so who's coming up, but not inside. So if you're wanting to kind of make sure about security, you want to make sure that whoever you accept the booking, there's an option to put instant booking, but you can say, they have to have a government ID with Airbnb. And a lot of times they do kind of run a minimum background check, I think, through that, because I've seen people, did not work out. So that's a really good thing to be in place. I would also message, hey, what brings you to town? Open that conversation up to make sure you feel comfortable with that. And then, and we could talk more about this privately, Amanda, but things you can put in place so that you can deal with the privacy and security. You want to lock your stuff down, your place, when your room, when you're not there as well. And then Eric asks, team business partner, superhost, owning to, oh, cool. Well, glad you're here. Hope that, hear from you if you have any questions. And I mentioned hotel tax. So if you're in most areas, especially cities, do have occupancy and hotel tax. Airbnb does take care of it. But outside of that, you're going to want to make sure you take care of it. And you can Google and see what it is. And it's different, right? So your sales tax and your hotel and occupancy tax are two different things. So it tends to be over 10 in some way, usually. Yes, and I will definitely send this link. So you guys, I believe I have all of your emails because we sent you guys reminders with the link. So I will make sure to get a note of all of you who are here so that I can send out the link to this recording after it is done. Thank you so much for asking. I definitely meant to miss that. When property is out of state, I have many, many more tips, Kim, so make sure you reach out. But I have actually done that in person. We travel very frequently, full time. I say we're like both, professional hosts and guests. We stay at a lot of Airbnbs. So if you want to know about that, I can tell you how we do that. And we do not have an RV. And there are, how many of us are there? 7 of us. And we travel with our 2 dogs and we go full time. So I'm happy for anybody who's interested, reach out to me personally. And I'd be glad to share with you how we do that. So your own reservation. So yes, you can. Calvin's question was, can I set up my own reservations or should you register with Airbnb, an Airbnb company? So which is Airbnb is a platform-based, a platform option that you can choose from. And there's other ones just like that. And so you don't have to. I recommend that you do it because they market for you, right? And so you're about that 3% that you pay is for the marketing that they're doing for you, but you can set up your own. There are websites that allow you to set up a booking platform. I believe Lodgify is one. I have not used it, but there are ones. You can even do a Google of like, and I would price compare. I would also do kind of a compare as well of like, how to, what the pros and cons of each of these platforms. E. Grimes says, we are hosting a vacation home recently purchased. First steps on how to get started, price, different season, vendors, getting cameras on site. So I have answered all of that. Great questions. That makes me feel good. I'm actually answering questions. Definitely will send you the recording, Mandy. Say at age minimum, great question. How do you set it? From Jean. So on, I believe VRBO will let you. Airbnb, you have to kind of put it in there directly. So make sure you put it in as many places as you can. So I actually have taken to put it in description. If I look at the person and I'm like, just the other day, and I noticed like, hey, are you 25 or older? And they weren't. And then when that's the case, and if it's my owner, I suggest, let's do a $500 deposit. And this was like a bachelor party. He's like, there's gonna be a party, we're casual. And I'm like, okay, we'll see. $500 deposit if the owner says it's okay. So, but definitely set that age minimum, set that price high as well. Of course, high within, reason. That's going to definitely bring you more responsible guests who appreciate your place. Trust me on that one. That's a great question. Twice the rent. So, it actually, and I was confused gross and net, but essentially, you can make twice after all your expenses. And that is actually, let me make sure I'm careful with this. What you give to Airbnb, what you give to your cleaning person, is kind of when I think about with that. Now, if you're paying your mortgage with it, which a lot of us do, then we have found that the profit, if you're including all of that, the profit on that tends to then be double for some of us, right? For most of us, actually. So, for example, if your mortgage is $1,000, then I'm saying that you probably will bring in 2,000 to 2 to 5, and sometimes 4 on that, with the ratios of how I've seen it work. And the way you can really increase that amount is really paying attention to your seasons. Someone asked about that, as well as like go on there as a guest or get AirDNA, which is a platform that shows you logistics. There is a free version of it, and then there's also kind of the paid version. They pretty much show you all the data for where you're at, what people are getting, what day they're getting it. And there's another platform that I found that I'm probably going to start using that actually will increase your amount that you make from just doing your own stuff. I think it was like by a decent percent. I remember, maybe 12%. But and this was created by a hotel owner or hotel company manager who they use their logarithms to be able to determine pricing. So a lot of times hotels will adjust pricing depending on the trends, right? You know, what day it is, what time it is of the night, should we go up or high, what's going on in the season, and they have it all worked out to know kind of where that is. I do a lot of that manually, and it's worked pretty well for me. This even more dwindles it down. And a lot of this stuff we can have like singular, you know, topic sessions on. Similar to a property management company. Okay, software. Yes, Streamline's a big one. That's like gosh, what's the other one? It's like Salesforce, right? For property management companies. I actually was on a call with them, and they've got really great software. A lot of companies use them. And then you can work your way down. Guesty is another one that's really good. If you think you're going to really grow, then I probably would try to start with Streamline, see if that's possible for you, because they do cover a lot of bases. One of the problems with some of these softwares is that they may not have a good CRM, but they have a really good this. And so you're probably going to have to buy multiple things. And so the least amount of multiple things you can buy, the better. So for example, you're going to want to have, for example, an emailer client, you're going to want to have a CRM, and you're going to want to have your property management software. You might want to have a booking platform as well. And a lot of times those aren't going to be included in the same thing. So, and that can stack up in cost. So you want to make sure you kind of check that out and see the different combinations that's going to be right for the amount of income that you're bringing in. Yes, AirDNA. I use it sometimes. I've been doing kind of my own thing that's worked really well for me, but a lot of property management companies and pretty much anybody uses that. It's a really great resource. AirDNA is. And yes, I can repeat about taxes. So for taxes, sales tax and hotel occupancy tax is two different things. Airbnb does take care of that for you. VRBO only half. I think they only do the sales tax. So, but they'll collect the tax for you, but you'll be responsible for filing and paying it. The way you do that is you're going to want to go wherever your state is or whatever your city is, excuse me, you'll want to get a sales tax number so that you know where to go and what to put it in there. And if you Google how to pay sales taxes or occupancy hotel tax, it'll show you exactly how to do that. In Texas, you would go and get your sales tax number, and you would pay your hotel occupancy taxes using your sales tax number. So again, your city and state tax. So what you pay when you buy something from the store is different than hotel and occupancy taxes. Hotel and occupancy taxes are super expensive. If you've ever stayed and looked, that's why your taxes are a lot more expensive than when you go to the store and buy something. Cleaning services. The best way to find a cleaning service is a recommendation. From that, it's like going into Facebook groups and asking people, you know, excuse me, like a business Facebook page or a page where they list like networking and things like that. Any community, you say, hey, are any of you any cleaning services or have availability? Can you message me? And then a lot of them will message you to do that. And then there's, what was that called? Thumbtack. And there's another one that's new that my assistant had found some people. But when you're looking for cleaning service, and I'll touch on a little bit of this, but I highly recommend us having longer conversations if you want to know about this, because there's so many things to look at. You want to ask certain questions, have a list of questions you ask them. And a lot of times a person can be a great cleaner, but when they scale their business, they bring in new people, and they'll have other people do the cleans for them. And it's like it gets further removed from that original source. And so you're not always able to guarantee the quality of that. And so one of the things I'll ask is, do you clean it, or does your crew clean it, or do you clean it with your crew? You're going to want to ask those questions. And then you might want to ask, how do you how do you ensure the quality in your standard if you're not there, right? What do you do if there is something wrong or we get a complaint when I call you with that? These are things I wish I had known. The way you can, as a owner or as a host, mitigate that is have a stager. So QC, QA, right? Quality assurance, quality control. Have a stager or somebody you know that you pay, and it doesn't have to be a much, and it's definitely worth it. It's better to pay them, you know, $15 an hour or whatever it is to go by and check your place before and after. If you don't have a person who already does that, to make sure that nothing's damaged, nothing's missing, and on the other end to make sure the cleaners got everything, because you don't want your guests getting there saying there's crumbs in the microwave, the oven hasn't been cleaned or has something in it. And so when you're talking to your cleaners, you want to also ask them, do you clean the microwave? Do you empty? Or actually even better, this is what I did after learning this the hard way, make a checklist. And I have lists and checklists and things I can offer that. Have a checklist and then ask them, would your people be offended? Are you okay with working off of a checklist? Because not everybody cleans the same thing. So someone who's not used to an Airbnb just might not think about checking the coffee pot to make sure there's not a filter with grounds in it, or checking the Keurig to make sure the Keurig things are out. And those are little things that you don't want to be an issue. Or are you okay with putting out snacks and replenishing items that are missing, like the, not missing, but items like we put chocolates for one, we have coloring books and crayons and things like that, and doggy toys. And so, you know, we want to ask them, can they refill that? And so they're not used to Airbnbs, you're going to want to ask those questions. And if you're going to hire them and they've never done Airbnbs before, then you're going to want to have a very clear list of what they're going to do. And I can help with that as well if you need it. And Steven, sorry, okay, good. Okay, I was had your name wrong. Okay, thanks for clearing that up. Glad you guys are here. I have your email. Is it Charo? Very pretty name. Candace, automation, great question. I use something called Brevo. I really like it. It was another property manager company who's been doing it years, told me about it because I asked them as a guest. And that's could be another conversation. Reach out, I can let you know. We can have a whole automation conversation. One of the things I'm going to set up is as kind of a B&B university kind of thing, where we talk about this stuff, and you always have kind of tools and things that help you do this, things I wish I had known. But yes, there's other things you can do. I'm a bit old school. I like to have things as localized as I can. Amazon goes down, everything goes down. So I don't think this is on the cloud because we didn't go down whenever Amazon went down, but Streamline apparently, one of the few times they went down because Amazon went down back in December. So think about that when you're deciding what you're going to do. But ours, it's a company. They send you a gateway. It's pretty much a Raspberry Pi, for those of you who knows what that is. And then you can buy pretty much any sort of equipment. So like we use Yale with the Z-Wave. As long as it has Z-Wave technology for this particular company, you can connect it into the Raspberry Pi. We've also have sensors on our lights where we can turn the lights on and off. And as well as on the owner's closet. I did not talk about owner's closet. Every Airbnb has some sort of owner's closet. It's a locked room where you put all your replenishable things. And so you can we put a sensor on our owner's closet so we know when it's open or closed. It also tells us logs when who leaves, who comes. And when the guest has used the code for the first time, I get a text. So that is a great one, but there's also other ones. We can have a whole thing about those options and the pros and cons of using them. Repair costs when being a co-host. That's a great question because I do that a lot. So ahead of time, I already set a standard. If something goes wrong and I can't get in touch with you and I need to fix it, are you okay with me fixing it right away? And what's the minimum or the maximum cost before I need to call you? That's a good question to ask. And I personally take care of the cost. So I have like the cleaners and pretty much all the vendors bill me. And then I send for the co-host situation because then the owner, the main host, they get the money. So I invoice them at the end of the month with everything that they need to cover that was done. And so that's kind of what we did, plus my fee as well. Great question. Insurance. Air cover is great. What I have found that works really well is having, your homeowner's insurance because they haven't like quite caught up with short-term rentals, you can get an umbrella policy. And the way air cover works is if the guest does any damage to your place, they cover it up to $1 million. And now, as of, I want to say the fall, pets are included in that. They're trying to encourage people to allow pets. Yes, and that is not super clear. So they don't necessarily cover anything that you would be liable for, right? So if something happens to them, it has nothing to do with them, you want to make sure your homeowner's insurance policy covers that. And an umbrella essentially covers kind of everything in between, especially if you're like our condos in a resort, for example. So there's swimming pools and all this other stuff over there. And so having that umbrella kind of covers, the rest of that. As you grow, if you decide that you want to have kind of a damage waiver, I've seen a lot of property management companies set something like that in place where you pay, it's not super a whole lot, and the guest maybe pays, I don't know, $20 or $30, and it covers any damage that they may do while they're there. Now, I have not had to file anything with Airbnb because I've heard like up to about a few $100s if the guest doesn't agree. And I have a whole way that I have dealt with this. I've never had to file because I have a way that's worked really well. The very few times I've needed to talk to the guests about covering anything, and usually it's been very minor stuff. But definitely having your own insurance, your regular homeowner's insurance, and umbrella policy is really, really good way to kind of cover your bases on that. Double with doing the unparished room. So it's the entire house. I have not, and I know people who do it, so I can probably get some numbers. Yes, double with the entire house. Now, the interesting thing is that because now it's gotten more popular, when I see one-room places or even RVs and campsites, a lot of them are still looking at like 100 to almost 200 for some of the, depending on the amenities and what you include with just doing one room in the house. So I would recommend going as a guest onto Airbnb and checking your area out and seeing, who's renting what, how much it costs, if you find any that are a shared space in a house, and see kind of what they're charging. Because if you have it set up where the bathroom's en suite, if there's a private entrance for them, or they don't have to deal, run into you, maybe except for into common areas, then that might also adjust your pricing as well. Financing options in person and prop STR. Actually, yes, there are, depending on where you do it. If you go to an area that's just high-end vacation rentals, then a lot of times banks are used to it, and they will allow you to use the data of either itself, which is ideal, right? So if it's already being used as an STR when you're looking to buy it, and it has income history, that will definitely help you with your financing. They will include it when looking at seeing if you can, how they want to finance it. So we were looking at a place just recently, and it didn't work out what we wanted to. Yeah, we're still kind of finding other ways to do it, but because of the area, you go to the banks that are used to doing these types of loans. We were doing a really big one though, but you're doing these types of loans, and they will look at the income and make that a part of the income, so that knowing you're buying it depending on the income that it's going to make. So the cool thing is, if you're in the right place with the right bank, you can do that. And the way to know is usually those areas that are high in short-term rentals. Hot tubs. I honestly, for me personally, if I ever had hot tubs, that's something that I had personally on my property and it wasn't a part of an association or a resort, I probably would have, in a pool, and I had just recommended this to someone else, find a template, or we can give you a template to have them sign a waiver. And also make sure you have an umbrella policy in place anytime someone's going to be getting in a pool or hot tub that's directly that you own and it's not part of a community. It's just a safe thing to do. I've also seen people charge hot tub cleaning fees. I don't know if I'd encourage that personally, because I think that it's better just to let them know that you will charge them if they give them the rules, right? If they use certain things in your hot tub, oils, things that mess it up, and you have to drain it, then they'll be responsible kind of for costs, or you could charge a deposit for it as well. Consulting, I will, yes, you can totally contact me for consulting. I'll send that to you here when we go to what's next. And yes, I can offer more of these sessions. Thank you, Amanda and Lisa. I will definitely get that over to you. Let me make sure I've gotten everybody's questions so far. So this is kind of a bit of what we offer. I love being super flexible, so we can customize it however you need it. This is essentially another word for like property management, but the benefit of it is it's passive income. I love Warren Buffett's quote, unless you find ways to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. It's very true. It makes me sad when I see older people who retire and then they end up having to work somewhere and they might not have necessarily planned that, because the bills keep coming and inflation and all of that changes, and whatever you save, then it's a set amount and you have no more coming in, and you have to either rely on Social Security, which they say, is just dwindling. So real estate is really a really great way to create your retirement plan. I actually know an amazing, thank you, Corinne. I'm so glad you're here too. I know someone who lives at one of the, or not lives, but she has a condo where we have a condo, and I've gotten to know a lot of them who do STRs out there. And she and her husband are retired, and I mean, I think they're still relatively young, and they travel, and they have developed or gotten over the course of their lifetime a rental, I think in Colorado, at least one, and then a rental where we're at here in Texas, and then there's one in Hawaii that they have, and then they do a little bit of property management, and that's their retirement. Like they get income from that, and that pays for everything that they're doing, and they love that. She's also a realtor, so that's another way she probably brings in stuff. But and I think they just bought another place out in Dallas. So there's ways that you can use this to really pay for your dreams, your retirement, future homes. I mean, the money, it's just the money packs so well, it stacks so well. That's why we're able to kind of be looking at getting new homes as well, especially with the super increase in the housing market. We're able to kind of try to leverage our equity into buying a few more places. And anybody can do that, right? You just got to be kind of creative with your financing, going to the right places, and leveraging what you've created and what you've made. And once you can show that your properties make income, you can use that, free up the income you're making to put into something else to make more income, and it kind of exponentially grows when you do that. So property management path, depending on if you have the time to do it or not, can be really great. I only charge 15 to 20% depending on what we have going on, and 500 setup depending on what you need before we get started. If you're already ready to go, we also offer, and I recommend it because it's amazing footage. We do video and photography and drone footage, all the things you kind of need to get going and get things up there, as well as consulting or whatever you need. And this pretty much includes everything. Everything and anything. It's maintenance in making sure your place is maintenance, making sure your filters are changed, making sure your grass is mowed, making sure your trash goes out at the right time. Actually, someone who takes my trash out and waters my lawn at one of the properties that we have. So depending on what your needs are, we can totally do that. And I don't think many people do all of that. And then this is kind of more the consulting and coaching and things like that. Because I am an Airbnb ambassador, Superhost ambassador, I think is what it's called, or Ask Superhost. If you have not set up your listing yet, there is an option that still is quite free to you, which is, I think, it's great, where if you use my link, and if you want it, let me know. I can put it in there. I'll put it in the chat. If you want to use my link, then it connects you with me on the Airbnb platform. And there's like a walkthrough of how to set up your listing. I can look at it and help you from the platform. And then once you host your first guest, Airbnb actually pays me as their contractor for helping you get started. And that doesn't cost you anything because Airbnb covers that. And that's just Airbnb, not VRBO. If beyond that, you're wanting more stuff, and I've had people do that, and they're saying, hey, I don't really want to do this by myself because of all the things that are going on in my life, or I'm nervous, or I need some more confidence, then I can come alongside and do co-hosting. And I love to keep it flexible because some people are like, I want to try, and then I don't want to try. And and it really does help to have kind of that support if you get it. And I'm getting the link for you right now. The other thing, we have the consulting. So pretty much what we're doing right here, where you guys ask me questions, and I kind of support you. I have somebody who kind of like to get a text support, TEXT, where she'll message me when different things come up. And my suggestion, anytime you have a question, like I would set up with text support, like or at the very least where you can message and get a question answered, because these things come up so quickly. And she was like, they had dogs and we didn't know about it. What do I do? And I was like, okay, this is what you say. Say, hey, so glad you had a good time. I hope you had a good time. I noticed that you brought your fur baby, which they're totally welcome, but I think you might have forgotten to add them to the reservation. Would you like me to show you how to add them? And so it's a way to kind of bring it up without putting anybody on the defensive. I'm pretty good at doing that. That's one of the things I was saying that I use, tips that I use to kind of help get things paid for if things go awry. And yes, I'm getting the link here. And then we have, I think I'd mentioned it before, the bit of co-hosting. So this is kind of the co-host. The setup fee just really depends on what you need. I set that up because I had someone, as I was kind of getting my feet wet with doing the co-hosting thing, because I'm more used to the everything, doing the everything thing. And so there was a lot of preliminary setup, a lot of stuff I kind of had to put in place for that person. And so to make sure that they're getting what they need, and I still have able to offer that time to them, we set up the setup fee, and that does not include the photography, videography, and drone that we do. So which is awesome. If you're going to get on VRBO, I highly recommend doing that, because let me see here, because it will definitely increase your views, increase your ability to list. And here I'm going to find my posting. Have that ready. Okay, so there's that. And then here's some of the a la carte stuff. So if you're not really sure what you want to do, or you do want to do it, or you just want to learn more stuff like this, we're developing a whole community so that you guys can, we can all talk to each other. But we can set it up where you can just message me whenever you need to, or you can, drop into some of the classes as we get that developed, and we're going to kind of create a whole curriculum. And it helps to hear all these different questions to be able to do that. We also have developed quite a few documents that has been really great for really good for getting started. So you're not having to essentially reinvent the wheel. You can get a template and have it customized to what your needs are throughout there. That even the check-in, the checkout details, checkout checklist, your guest book, the manual essentially when they come in, things to do in the area. These are things that I know, even as a property manager, I did not get to. I did not get to a physical checklist that needed to go into my place. And for my own places, I do it for my clients. But for the first like years, and actually my cleaning person, she made the checklist. She's like, done with this, I'm making a checklist for you. And she actually did the guest book for one of my places. And now I have someone who puts that together for me and for my clients. That's been really helpful. So let's see here. Let me find my link. There it is. Okay. So I'm going to send this, and then I'll put it in the chat here. Thank you for your patience. I am across devices right now, so it takes a minute sometimes to get things. So yes, I'll get the link. Hopefully it'll come here to this one here. I can share it. But yes, this is also available. If you guys want to do that. I wish I had this available, especially the documents, because I pretty much had to come up with all my own stuff. The contracts, all of that stuff is really helpful. And if you choose to do property management yourself, it's good to have some good contracts in place so that you can know what to do there, as well as if you need to have a presentation for your what do you call it, for your leasing, if you want to lease from somebody, if you want to be able to partner with somebody and you want to have a presentation available, that would be good too. So I'm going to put in right now my email so you guys have that, just in case I'm missing something, and you have something else you need from me, and also getting that link to you guys. Let's see here. So there's my email, and then I will get you, see if I can figure out where that is here. Okay. Simple. May not be showing up. I might need to type it in. Okay. Just a second. Let's see. The link. Okay, I'm just going to type it in here because it is not showing up like I want to. Give me just a moment to get that to you guys so you have it. And that way you can connect with me on here. I highly recommend using it. It has worked out really, really great for a lot of future hosts who became actual hosts all over. So while I'm doing this, I'm curious, and I did not ask this in the beginning. I know some of you came in here later. So what parts of the world are you all in? I know we had a couple of people from Texas, at least, but where are the rest of you guys from? If you want to put it in the chat. 2, 3. Oh, that's awesome. Kansas City, Charlotte. That is great. Oh, this is great. I love it. San Antonio. Okay. So tell me if somebody could go to that and tell me if it works, because I kind of hand typed it. ESPNT. Canada, I love that. I don't know if you're going to be familiar with Clubhouse. That is a great place to market and do things. I met, okay, did not work. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to log into my own meeting and see if I can do it that way and put it in the chat. It might not let me do it. Okay. All right, I am going to put myself here on mute. And I think I figured it out here. Chat. Okay, I just did it again and see if that, yeah, I think I did it again. If that works. Galveston, okay, yay, good. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, we did it. Okay, so yeah, so that's my Superhost link that should connect you with me on there. If you click that and you set up yourself as a new host, this is really great if you know for sure you want to host yourself and you might want support. If you know for sure that you're wanting to go the full property management route, then let me know and we can set up a whole thing, because there's other questions and things I can ask you for that. And if enough of you are interested, we'll do another one of these info sessions specifically on property management and how to get started with that. Well, awesome. Well, I think that's it. So I'm going to let, whoever wants to come up here, if you have any questions that I have not gotten, I'd love to hear from you. I'm so sorry I've been talking like this whole time, so I hope it was engaging. But feel free to come off mute if you have any other questions.
Hello, I have a question.
Hi, who's talking?
I'm Hannah. How are you?
Hi, Hannah. I'm good. So glad you're here. What's your question?
So I've heard of Furnish Finder and also Booking.com. Do you recommend either of those, or do you think just stay with Airbnb? And
so I've heard of Booking.com. I think as many platforms is always good. The thing is that you want to watch out for. I would start with one, unless you have help. Airbnb is a great place to start because, in my opinion, of all the platforms I've seen, it's just so much more conducive. Go to VRBO next because I know their calendars talk to each other. And one of the big things is you're going to want to make sure you check all of the different, like that your calendars are the same. The booking preferences. I've actually just had one of my hosting people that I was consulting. I'm trying to see which one she said it was. I think she said it was booking.com, but I don't want to say the wrong thing. But let's just say it was booking.com, but that might not be right. But she went and set that up, and she messaged me and she said, I had somebody book my listing for the same day at 1 a.m, and they were trying to get in, and I didn't know because I was sleeping. And so, so to avoid that, on any new platform you go on, you're going to want to make sure you see what is the booking preferences. Now, instant booking, I highly recommend it. But if you're just starting out, start with one platform, turn on instant booking. I think they'll start penalizing you if you don't. They want to make sure you're not screening your guests. But you can say that they can book automatically if Airbnb has got a government ID, and you can say with the profile picture. I don't, because I don't want them to flag me. But they have to have a government ID on file. Like, you don't get that, but Airbnb has essentially done a preliminary kind of background check, if you will. And so I won't let anybody book instantly unless that's in place. Oh, and they have to have at least some positive reviews. So if it's a new person that doesn't have any reviews, or they're not a new person, they might have a couple negative reviews, or if they don't have their ID and stuff in place, then they have to request to book, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
Meaning they're not going to be able to book without you looking through, asking some questions. Now, there is an option where you can put, and some people will do this, where you can put, they have to request, we don't instant book, but it'll warn you, if you choose to keep instant book off, your results where you are on the listing may go down. There may be an issue because they want to make sure as automated as they can that people aren't screening in the wrong way. And so that's kind of what I recommend. So start with one, get used to kind of the things that you need to kind of look for to make sure you're not caught off guard. They'll even ask, how soon can someone book? I have same day, but I have to let them know, like, you might not get to check in right at the right check-in time, depending on what's going on and if it's ready.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. That was a great question.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any?
I've got a question.
Yes, who's talking?
Amanda, I can put my video. If you are on if you're on a couple of platforms, because I didn't even think of it, I was just going to start with Airbnb. How does that work? Like, can you have people booking at the same dates, and can that?
That's a great question. So for example, I'll use Airbnb, VRBO. Those are the ones I've used quite a bit from the beginning. They have a way to sync the calendars, and you're going to want to make sure you sync from both directions. And what that means is you got to sync from Airbnb, where you place in the link there from VRBO, and then you got to go to VRBO, place a link from Airbnb in there. And if you need me to walk you through it, let me know, because you don't want to make that mistake. Because what happens is, if that's set up correctly, when someone books one, it'll block it on the other calendar, and vice versa. It blocks it. And so across other platforms, before you go into one, and Hannah, goes for you too, is make sure that it says that it will sync to the other's calendars. Because some might say no, we don't want to connect with them because of competition, blah, blah, blah. So you want to always, but most of them do, want to make sure they all sync together. And then this is where a property management software, if you grow and you have a bunch of booking platforms, will really help, because they will allow you to put it all in there. And then now your messages, because I got to go to 2 different places to send my messages and to send check-in details, but I do get notifications. Always make sure your phone notifications are on and you can hear them. I even know another property manager who wears a watch, an Apple Watch, so that when he's sleeping or anywhere, if his phone's not with them, he can always answer a guest. And he's a super host and been doing it since he's like 17. And I think he's like 25 now. And he's still a super host, which is huge, because that's thousands of people. But yes, make sure that you if you do that across platforms and you don't have a software, a property management software, then just be prepared to be going to each of them to communicate with your guests, which is fine. But I would start with one, like I would say, like you were saying, you're going to start Airbnb. I would start there because they really did great with the interface. The other ones get a little clunky, which is fine because it's something that you need to learn. But if you have your Airbnb in place, you're used to it, you've kind of knocked out the kinks of getting comfortable, and then you open yourself up to other ones. If you are going to co-host, that gets tricky because I know VRBO doesn't have a setup like that, and I don't really know if the other ones do. And so I have a client that's doing that, and it's clunky. I'm not a fan of it, of us having to figure it out, but I have to log into her account sometimes to make sure I'm messaging them, make sure they have my information, and then I'll kind of text them on the side. Try to keep most of your communication on the platform, at least main stuff, but it is definitely very good to reach out because that personal element increases the likelihood their experience is going to be very good and they're going to give you a good review. And I will tell you, I've never asked for a review ever. Not saying you shouldn't, just my style. I've seen other people do it. I can give you tips on how people do it in a way that they ask without asking, but I've never asked and I have done very, very well. And I'm just super nice and I communicate and I'm like, hey, how you doing? What do you need? And people just love that. And I'm very accommodating. So sum up your answer. Definitely start with one. Maybe get to know the others before you go live. Make sure your calendars are synced. Double check that. The way you can is like block a day, like just, go and block a day and then make sure that that's blocked on the other ones. And then you'll know it works.
Okay. All right. That's helpful.
Thank you. That's a great question. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, yes. Hi.
Hi, this is Kim. I have a kind of a two-part question.
Yeah.
So how does Airbnb work with like the deposit or damage policy or something like that? Because recently we stayed with VRBO and we had an option to, for $59, get insurance or pay $1,500, and if there's no damage, get the money back. So how does Airbnb cover that if there's any damage to any of your property?
So that is a great question. So VRBO is very, it's been around a bit longer, and they have it set up to where a owner can elect to collect a deposit or offer. It's kind of like a damage waiver. A damage waiver, which is kind of like temporary insurance, but you don't get the damage waiver back. And so it says, lose $59 for sure, or give $1,500 and get all of it back if nothing goes wrong. And so like I don't have that set up on mine, but an owner can like to do that on VRBO when you're doing your setup process. Airbnb, I believe you can collect a deposit. You can charge, it's a little bit more, interesting how you do it. So I believe, and I have to check because I don't actually collect a deposit right off for it, and I don't really usually see it on there. So you may have to do it manually. I have to double check that when you do it through Airbnb, meaning what that means is you let them know, in your listing already before they even book it. So they're aware of it. We collect a deposit on each stay. It's fully refundable if there are no incidentals. And then I know for sure the way you can collect it is you make sure they've agreed to it when they've even booked the place. And then you send a request through the portal, and I can walk you through that if you need to for that money. And that they pay, and then you can, refund the money back after the stay is over. That's a way that I've collected one-off deposits for certain situations that were kind of different for guests that have stayed there before. So Airbnb, VRBO already allowed you to add a pet to reservation. Airbnb didn't, and so that was kind of how you had to collect pet fees. Now they actually do allow you to add it to your reservations along with the guests. And then you can elect to charge a pet fee that you set in your settings. And then when they select pet, they'll automatically do the charge. Downside to that though, is if you charge per pet, I don't believe they will do it per pet. But you can elect to charge for your pet for either for the full stay or per night. And you just make sure they know if Airbnb's thing doesn't cover what the actual fee is based on how they have it automated, then you just let them know it's per pet. Airbnb only charges for the one, and I'll send a request for the other fee that's there. And that's for any fees that aren't automatically there. And for Airbnb, the only fee that you can, I think, put in there There's a few of them that you can do. I think there's a resort fee and parking. I think they'll let you do all of that. And then if it's not there, then you just set it up separately, if that makes any sense. So I'd have to check, and I can get back to you on that to find out if there is a way to set it up in there. But I don't think there is on Airbnb, but there is on VRBO.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. Anybody else have any questions? You guys are on fire. These are great questions. I wish I hadn't known this stuff. Well, if there are no more questions, I in the chat, for those of you who might have showed up a little bit later, I put my email in there. Thank you. My email's in there, as well as my Airbnb link. So if you know for sure you want to jump in and start hosting, and you want to put in my link at no cost to you, Airbnb will connect us, and I can help you do your listing. And before you publish it, I can even jump on there and help you edit it. And then you won't get all the different settings yet. They have it real simple to kind of walk you through it. I can show you how to take pictures with your phone temporarily until you get professional ones done. And then you publish. And then at that point, I can walk you through, make sure you have these certain things set up on there so that you don't run into these problems. And then after you host your first guest, Airbnb actually pays me for you. And then from there, you can go wherever you want. You keep going into the sunset, or you can, sign on with me for consulting or questions or whatever. So that's there. My email's there as well. I definitely will be in contact with each of you guys. Oh, you're welcome. I'll be in contact with each of you guys afterwards just to see if you need anything. Thank you for coming. This is my biggest group so far. That's super exciting. So glad you all are here. Thank you for your time. I really pray that it was really helpful and excited you. I just had a conversation last night with a new person too. We had a one-on-one call, and he was getting his place renovated. So there was a lot of, when is it going to be done? And yes, and Tim, you can ask me now, or if you want, you can email me and I can answer you there too. So it's up to you. That goes for anybody. If you want other questions and you want to email me personally, feel free, or you can ask them here.
Sure,
so go ahead.
sure.
Yes.
I would like to ask, if I just don't want to interrupt, like you're wrapping up here. So yeah, thanks so much for the information. So I'm excited. I personally like that. I start the Airbnb like few months ago. I already experiencing because this is now the peak seasons, the summer, right? And I experienced few guests just I have a really most of them have give me a very good experience, but I have a few guests that give me a lot of headache. I yeah, right. I try to keep my guidebook and my rules short and sweet, but however, I just don't want to keep listing and adding on it. But a lot of times I find out it's always never win. They gave me the feedback, I add on based on the suggestions, and the next guest keep asking more and more. It's the guest is keep asking, they never have a satisfactions, right? For example, it's one of the white towels that I use, and then they end up have a lot of makeup on it. And you know what? I feel, you know what I mean? I say, okay, I can bleach that, I can do it, but I want to be clear that the guests are not abusing it, right? So I said, okay, please use it responsibly. And then the next time that I had, the guests to say, well, I wish there was a few more chairs. And so I put that on, and then they say, I want a toaster ovens, I want this appliances, I want this small appliances. It just never ends. So I just wanted your opinions on this. How do we draw the line? How do we help with setting? You know what I mean? I don't want to be exhausted and burn out because I'm just keep giving in. You know what I mean? It would be helpful. You can shine some wisdoms and help me on this. How do I draw the line? How do you discern what is appropriate, what is not?
That's a great question. For the makeup question, and it's the perk of being both guest and host at the same time. You learn a lot. And my favorite that I've seen is, and we use these. You can actually get black towels that say makeup on them from Amazon. Because it will ruin your towels. And we still have the people who decide to dye their hair and do that stuff. And so what we learned from there, and I love it, you can get make a cute little note and word it real cute and just say, if you'd like to dye your hair or, anything that, may be best suited, then we'll have actually some either towels that are that have been kind of, they're clean, but they've, been used for different things, kind of in a cute little basket somewhere out of sight. And we ask them to kind of use the makeup towels. And I've seen some people have in a very good place. Yes, definitely. And no white towels is also an option as well. It just kind of depends on the preference. And some people will even do different colored linens to avoid that as well. We've kind of stayed white towels. We don't have to exchange them too much, and have really great people who know how to get stains out. But what you can do is, you can, have your black towels, have a little note there that kind of says something cutesy and sweet, so people don't mind doing it, to answer that part. Now, as far as what you were saying with, where you draw the line, one of the things that I love to do over amenities, like I go overboard with amenities personally, and try to kind of get ahead of that. So for example, I put, robes, one of our bathrooms, actually two of our bathroom places in our bathrooms, we put robes in there that make a whole little spa setup. And then in the in that bathroom, we have Paul Mitchell fancy tea tree shampoos in there, and a spa, table. And I think we have a spa pillow back there. You don't have to do that. This is an example. In the kitchen, we have a Keurig and a pot, like a what do you call it? Drip coffee. We get fancy beans because everybody asks. I shouldn't say everybody, but most everybody will say, "What's your coffee situation?" I have a picture of it because of that. I get that question so many times. And I have the whole spread. We have condiments on there with fancy like agave and sugar in the raw, because a lot of people are conscious about that. And people notice that. And I wonder, and this is just kind of me speculating, because I don't get a whole lot of requests for stuff, very rarely. One of our places didn't even have a Keurig for 3 years. And I just had my first person ask. They didn't even ask me to get one. They just said, "Do you have one?" And I was like, "No, but we can put one in there for you." And actually after an air fryer. And I'm like, "Nope, that's fine." So for me, because I don't get those requests too often, I'll go ahead and do it because it'll get used. I've had 1 year someone asked me for a rice cooker because it was a Thanksgiving. Well, they were paying $400 a night. So I'm like, "Yes, I can get you a rice cooker." And I know it will get used. So that's something that you can think about when you decide to get it. Like, it's something that's going to make your place more amenity rich. Are you okay with that? And how much are they paying per night? I might, if I were you, I don't know how much you're charging per night, but I might go on as a guest, like do a search on Airbnb as a guest and look in your area and see how much things are around there. Because I've noticed when my price point is higher, I get the guests that just really appreciate the opening my home up and all the amenities that are there. Because we provide pretty much everything. The only thing they need to really bring are their clothes and their food. And even that, we'll put a few snacks out there as well. And so, yes, and it's true. And so I had people mention, we loved all the amenities. And I've been to places where you can tell it's just bare bones. And when I tell people is, nobody, like people like you to spend money on them, like to feel like they're special, and they can usually tell when you're cheapening out on them, and that doesn't feel too good for the stay. And I've even been to those places. You can feel it. It's in the walls, right? And you're like, man, I feel like they're going to charge me for the electricity, and it just takes away from the experience. With that abundance, that's the word. Like, it's an abundance. And I think if you can create that, people tend to be pretty appreciative, especially if your price point is right, your age minimum is right, that you kind of have those things in place to really invite those guests who really appreciate you loving on them. Does that answer your question, Tim?
That's very good guideline. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. That's awesome. My age minimum is 25 years or older, and I put it in my description and my rules. Ask for reviews. I mean, that's a good question. So I was saying, I actually don't ask for reviews. What tends to happen, and when I first got started, and when I've helped other people get started, I'll usually say, "Hey, you're the first guest here, or you're one of our first guests. We're new at this, and please let us know if there's anything we can do better." And then you check with them. I check with them on both places, because let them hear your voice, especially if you're really good customer service. Like, "Hi there, I'm so glad you're here. We want to make sure we've made it comfortable." And when you do that, they connect with you. They appreciate you checking on them. They see that you're really making an effort to make them feel at home. And then people just give you the reviews. And they're usually quite nice about it on their own without you even asking. What I've seen other people do, and it works, they'll say, hey, we just gave you a 5-star review. Thanks so much for staying with us. And that kind of prompts them, the other person, to do the same. That's worked well for people. I don't do that because that's just not my style, but it's worked, especially when you're getting started and trying to build reviews. So that's one way to do it. I've actually had guests do that with me, right? Hey, I just sent you a 5-star review, and I think they're trying to probably build their reviews up as well. So that's also a way to do that. I'm trying to think of what other people have done. Some do it a little bit more, I want to say pushy, but a little bit more obvious. I probably wouldn't recommend that because you don't want to be accused of going in the wrong direction. Another tip I give people, like, if sometimes it's better to leave well enough alone, right? So if you've got a guest come and let's say they didn't review you, right? Sometimes it's better to leave it and just wait for the ones that will. And I usually won't review a guest until they reviewed me, unless there's just some really amazing experience and I want to make sure to just really pour into them. I've not really given a bad review, but that's just kind of my style. It's one of those, I don't feel comfortable, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't, right? I mean, because there's really good reasons for it. You want to let other people know, something might be wrong or whatever, but sometimes things just happen. Like I had the 1 time or 2 times I ever had damage, 2 different guests, 2 weekends in a row, which is very interesting. And I usually approach it, and it's worked really well. There was a hole in the wall and nobody told me anything about it. And so instead of like, what happened? I'm charging you everything. I was just like, hey, is everybody okay? They're like, yeah, did you enjoy your stay? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I just want to check on you guys. I noticed there was a hole in the bathroom and I just want to make sure that everybody's all right. And she was like, yeah, we're okay. I'm so sorry. I'm so embarrassed. And usually that's kind of how they feel. And then I'm like, oh, I understand these things happen. We're going to have our maintenance guy coming over here. It's going to probably cost this. Is that okay if I send that to you? Yes, please. I really love Airbnb. I really don't want to, get bad, reputation, of course. So, if you approach it that way, most times you don't even have to get Airbnb involved, and people are really happy to cover it. Now you come, guns blazing, you might not get the same response. Then they'll try to find all the things that are wrong with your place, right? I've seen that happen, not to me, but when people handle it that way, right? One of my favorite quotes from the Bible, several of them, is live by the sword, die by the sword. What you put out there will be what you get back. So keep that in mind. That has, as I said, 3 years. That's how I've done it. And it's always been a blessing for me. So any other questions?
I just have one other quick question.
Yes.
Your email, your link to Airbnb, once we use that and log in and you help us set up, if we have to come back and like add things or edit anything, will that link still get us to you every time?
Well, it'll automatically put you in a chat with me, so you can always chat with me through there anytime you want. I still have people check in with me.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. All right.
Yes, and then you can also, like, if you want to connect with me, even outside, you have my email, and I call and people chat with me all the time. And thank you, Corinne. Aw, you're so sweet. I totally received that. And Amanda, Superhost Ambassador. So Superhost is when you check off some boxes, and every, I want to say, quarter, they evaluate it and then they award it. So whenever you join, let's say you joined now, I believe they just did it at the beginning of July. So I want to say the next one may be September or October, maybe the beginning of October. And so between now and then, you check off those boxes. They don't make it super difficult. You have to have so many reviews. It needs to be over 4.7 or 8. And so many stays in that period of time, I think, and a response rate, which means how often you accept your and respond to your messages. And then if you've met all those requirements, the next time they assess it, you will get it. That's what a Superhost is on Airbnb. VRBO has its equivalent. Not sure about the other ones. And then an ambassador is when Airbnb essentially contracts you to do different things. There's other ones, like I've talked, sometimes when you talk to them or chat with them, you might be talking to an ambassador who's there, in some kind of capacity. They don't work directly for Airbnb, but they're contracted. And so they started Ask a Superhost program in the fall because they're really trying to pour millions of dollars and encouraging people all over the world to host their place. And I love it because there's so much freedom in it for many different people who do it. And so they invited me to be part of it, and I said yes. And then they connected me on a dashboard, and they send people to me all day long with questions to essentially encourage them and help them as they're ready to host their place. And then once it goes all the way to hosting their first guest, and then it's completed. And then yes, they can still message me, but at that point, my job for Airbnb is done, and then they pay me to do that. But the person can choose to continue to connect with me or not. And most of them, a lot of them actually do, from all over. Actually, you know, they have questions. Or one of them, she was in Knoxville, Tennessee, and she was like, she'll message me later, and she's like, "We are just totally booked." And it's so neat because a lot of them are kind of nervous, like, who's going to come out here in the middle of nowhere? And I'm like, you'd be surprised. So does that answer your question, Amanda? Or anyone else who might have had that question? And if anybody else has any more, I keep them coming. These are great. And if you think of a question later, like you guys have my email, message me. And if I see a lot of the same ones, like if you're like, hey, can we do a topic on this or that? I'm happy to set something like that up, so you guys can, you know, get those questions. Because I just know how it is, and it's so exciting. And I'm telling you, it's definitely worth it to do it. And I love that there's options. Like if you don't want to do it yourself, you can have somebody help you or come alongside you. If you guys don't have any more questions right now, then we will go ahead and get ready to close down this one. And just so you know, I'm doing these twice a week. There'll be another one on Saturday. We have it at noon Central. That may move around because the last time I did it, there weren't very many people who came, so I might do a little bit later. I might try at noon one more time Central. But we'll do this one again, same kind of thing. Oh, you're welcome. Same kind of thing next Thursday as well, same time. So, you know, feel free to pop back in if you have any questions. It's going to be a lot of the same information. But, you know, as I get more questions, I'll know kind of, you know, how I want to build out the curriculum for something a bit more intensive and more helpful. That is a good question. Yes, it is I'll double check that. And I have your name, Lisa, so I'll confirm with you. But I want to say now that we've done it twice, it's going to be the same one. I think it alternates. Oh, no, you know what? No, we're going to keep it the same one. So I think it is different now, but we're going to go ahead and make it the same to make it simple. So yes, use the same one, and that is what we will use for the next one as well. So yes, keep coming back, keep coming with questions, tell your friends, come on back, let me know what you need, let me know how I can serve you and see you guys grow. And I'm excited to see you guys on your journey. It'll be neat, you know,